Hey everybody, welcome to a brand new episode of La Vida Baseball Live. I'm Julie Alexandria here in, I'm just going to say it, Slam Diego, alongside Jennifer Mercedes in New Jersey and Ozzie Guillen Jr. in Chicago. Welcome guys, how are you?
Good. How are you?
We are good. Can you believe we have 3 weeks, pretty much 3 weeks left in the quote unquote regular season? And then we start the postseason. So there is still a lot of baseball to be played, and there's much to get to today. We have a jam-packed show. Happy 19th annual Roberto Clemente Day to you both. That is going to be the theme of our show. We're going to be talking about the man, the myth, the legacy, the great one. We're going to be sharing stories. We're going to be showing a great video of his sons and his family. And we're really going to dive into what he stood for, because his stats, his accomplishments, his legacy go far beyond the awards, the accolades, and of course the stat charts. So we are going to get into his life and talk all about the great one. But first, we want to give and pay homage to the passing of two Hall of Fame greats in Lou Brock and Tom Terrific, Tom Seaver. Lou Brock passed away on Sunday at the age of 81, a 19-year big league veteran. He was best known for his base stealing. He was a six-time All-Star, an MVP. He played the majority of his career with the Cardinals. He was also a Roberto Clemente Award recipient in 1975. And then we get to Tom Seaver, also a Hall of Famer, who led the 1969 Miracle Mets to glory, and he passed away at the age of 75. He was nicknamed Tom Terrific for many reasons. He played 20 seasons in the major leagues. He's a 12-time All-Star, Cy Young Award winner, Rookie of the Year, and he even has a no-no. 16 opening day starts, and he passed away, unfortunately, from dementia and the complications of COVID-19.
Our condolences to their families. Obviously, it's been a really rough 2020 with a lot of icons and idols passing away. But our condolences to their families.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, now we want to get into the reason for the day. Let's talk about Roberto Clemente. We have a wonderful video. Check this out.
We'll never forget you. We'll always love you. We are your living legacy. And we'll never drop the ball.
Playing right field. Number 21, Roberto Clemente.
Well, a very happy Roberto Clemente Day to everyone as the league celebrates the 19th annual Roberto Clemente Day. You know, you think back, who was Roberto Clemente? I just want to read off some of his stats because I feel like, you know, his legacy is remembered. He's remembered for the humanitarian acts that he provided. He's remembered for the philanthropy that he was able to do. But he was an incredible player, the first Latin American player to be elected to the Hall of Fame, 15-time All-Star, 12-time Gold Glove winner. He was a member of the 3,000 Hits Club, 4-time batting champ, the NL and the World Series MVP. Just incredible. 18 years with the Pirates, and today the Pirates will all be wearing number 21.
Yeah, he's a legend. And his numbers speak for himself. He also was the first guy to play in front of a TV, which I think helped his legacy because he was one of a kind the way that he played the game. When you look at him, what he was doing, it's very normal for us to see that now, but he brought that flavor of, you know, making amazing plays in the outfields. The 12 Gold Glove speaks for itself. So I think he was a guy that transcended. Again, when you look at the Jackie Robinson time and what Jackie did, that he changed the game in the sense of how people view the game. That's why most of his fans were not black fans. They were regular fans. They were like, oh my God, this guy can just play baseball. That same thing happens to Roberto Clemente. He comes in and basically changes the game. And Pittsburgh was really good at the time. So he also played in the biggest stage. So I think it was just something no one had ever seen. And that's why I think that as a player, his legacy was so big as a player. I think there's two parts to the Roberto Clemente story that even his wife Vera and his sons have become such a big part of it. And that's why we're talking about him today.
Yeah, his legacy transcends the field. I mean, he was an advocate not only for humanitarian rights, civil rights, but he was also an advocate for his players being part of the union, but also advocating for other Latino players to be able to play in the big leagues. He advocated for Osvaldo Vigil, who became the first Dominican player in the big leagues, and the list goes on and on. So he was an advocate, and that's something that will always live on.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned all of that, Jennifer, and when you look at what's happening in the world today, right, with just the divisiveness and the fact that we are having a racial reckoning in this country, I wonder how Roberto Clemente would have been received today had he been still fighting for that equality, had he been still as vocal as he was in the clubhouse back then. If you think he was way ahead of his time, or is it that those same issues still prevail today? I think both are true.
I think both are true.
Yeah.
I think just like he was in the 1970s. I think that Roberto, like players are today, are showing that when you're in the clubhouse, it helps and your teammates are usually behind you. But when you look at the media and the way that he was portrayed, I put a quote today of saying, "We are foreigners to everybody here." Mm-hmm. He would say always, "I am a black Puerto Rican," and he would emphasize the black. The famous, "I'm Bob. My name's Roberto, not Bob." He didn't give in to. He could have had it easier being quiet and letting him, call him Bob and letting him. And it was very hard at that time, and he went against it. He would often have issues with the media of, they would ask him, "Good morning, Roberto, how you doing?" And he'd say, why are you asking me that? You don't care. He was very confrontational, very
but the reason that he was that way. But
he was that way.
Yeah,
so I think today he would have a lot of issue with it. I think that's a part that I think that he was talking about uncomfortable things, and he didn't have to. Because he was being treated differently because he was Roberto Clemente, but he knew that his people weren't, and he had that chip on his shoulder throughout his whole career. And I think that sometimes you gotta give credit to that, because even with the pressure of playing, the pressure of being the best player on the Pirates, you're putting your face out there every single day, and you're talking about things that, it's easier just to talk about, hey, yeah, I went 4 for 4. I went 2 for 4, whatever it is, just stat wise. He was talking about things that were very, very hard to talk about then. And, I think that we're like reliving some of those things now. But when you look at the times when he was talking about it, he was right in the middle of the mix. Martin Luther King was still around, the civil rights movement. So for him, I think he transcended baseball in that aspect as well. There's people in the United States who didn't watch baseball who knew who Roberto Clemente was. So yeah. I think that's also part of his legacy.
Do you think that the media portrayed him fairly?
No. And during his time, and that's what I was going to get at with as far as why he was the way he was with the media. It's not that he was confrontational. It's not that he chose to be confrontational because he just was like that. He was like that because of the way that the media treated him, the way that the white media would quote him, and it's something that unfortunately we still see today in 2020, where we see sometimes players be quoted in a way that makes them look unintelligent. When in reality, you can just quote a player, what they're saying, and just write it. And so those were some of the things that he was contentious about and defensive about, rightfully so, because he knew what they were trying to do, and he wasn't going to fall for that. He wasn't going to let that be his portrayal, which is why he had that relationship with the media that he had. But I do think that, and this is my belief, if he had been here now, I believe he would have been one of the ones, maybe, I don't even know, maybe taking a knee, maybe not taking a knee, but for sure being part of the conversation when it comes to what the players are doing right now with speaking up on civil rights issues. I think he would have been very proud seeing where baseball is today, as far as players speaking up and speaking out and knowing that they have a voice and knowing the power that they have. Because like you said, Ozzy, he could have easily just been quiet and taken that easy route, but he didn't, and he spoke up because he knew, like he said, he came from a poor family. He was a poor man, and he represented that community, not just the Latino community, but the Black community, the poor Latino and Black community here in the States. And it was something that the discrimination part of what he lived here in the States, he never experienced that in Puerto Rico, even though Puerto Rico is part of the United States of America. It's something that he had never experienced on the island. And once he came to the States, it was something that caught him off guard, I guess. And the way that he lived his life, showing how proud he was to be a Black Puerto Rican, I think is part of, not only part of his legacy, right? But it's part of the way that players are advocating now. Like, it's not only about Jackie Robinson, but Roberto Clemente also played a very, very significant part in the civil rights movement and the way that Black players and Latino players are treated.
Mm-hmm. I think that for him, I think that for him, most people don't know this. Roberto served. He's a veteran.
And he also served, exactly.
So he had so many, I think, layers to him. Let's be honest, guys. Like, there's no La Vida Baseball back then, and we're still having issues in the media, 2020, how players are perceived or covered. So I can only imagine how it was back then. I compare it to how Ozzy was covered. My father, whose English was way better than Roberto's, he was in a position of power. And it was, 30 years after Roberto. So when you're seeing like how media portrays sometimes the way things are said or quotes, I can only imagine back then, teams didn't worry about, oh, well, if a writer writes something, we're worried about how the Pirates are going to be portrayed in the Hispanic community. Mistakes are being made today, and teams think about those issues. Back then, it was just like a free-for-all. So I think it's really hard to put into perspective on how you deal with that, even for someone that grew up in baseball, of not having anyone of color interview you, of, English as a second language, not having anyone around to say, yeah, that was misquoted. I think that's why I understand the chip on his shoulder, because if guys still have that chip on their shoulder today, I can only imagine when it was then. And I think people don't realize this. The culture shock of coming from a Latin American country, especially a place like Puerto Rico, a lot of places like Dominican Republic, when you come, Venezuela as well, when you come from playing in those areas, there is the race, there's different problems. It's usually not tend to race. So when you come to the United States and then you see the racial tension, it is a culture shock. It is like, whoa, really? Like, I've never experienced this. So remember, these guys are coming over not as children, they're coming as grown men. So it's a very hard part to adapt to. So to be able to, in the middle of your life, to come into a place where there is separation, there is segregation. So I think that also makes another big part of the legacy of Roberto.
I really
Absolutely.
wish, I really wish, like just yesterday, I watched his final interview before he passed, and like I wish that Roberto Clemente and Jackie Robinson was taught in history. I wish that the Negro Leagues were taught in history class in school. I wish that the Winter Leagues in Latin America and their impact on the Negro Leagues and Black players and Latino players, the type of impact that they had here in the States, because that history is not taught unless you look for it. Like it has to be, you have to do that on your own, or once you're in college, maybe that's something that you learn about. But that connection that the Latino community and the African American community, the Black community have had for a very, very long time is important, because I feel like, and I mean, this is aside from Roberto Clemente, but it also connects. I feel like right now, the times that we're living in, everyone is trying to be so divisive. Not everyone, but we know the powers that be try to be so divisive, even within the minority community. And if we only knew our history and how much we are connected, I think our power would be so much greater. And I think that that's where the powers that be know that and want us to be separated. And I think that knowing the history, knowing where Roberto Clemente came from, knowing Jackie Robinson, where he played, how he had the opportunity to play in Latin America, and a lot of other Black players having the opportunity to play in Latin America, I think that's so important. It's such an important part of our history, not just baseball history, that I really, really just want to say that to parents and everybody who's watching. Try and teach your kids, especially baseball parents, try and teach your kids about that history, because it's so important.
Absolutely. And if you look at the years that he played, to your point, Jen, he played in the major leagues from 1955 to 1972. Inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1973, he played during the height of the civil rights movement when everything was going down. And the fact that we are not readily taught about his legacy in correlation, in conjunction with the civil rights movement is unfortunate, because he fits right in there. Now, along with all of the Pirates wearing number 21 today in their game against the White Sox, all Puerto Rican players league-wide. There are 20 active Puerto Rican players in Major League Baseball currently here in 2020. They will all have the opportunity to wear 21. Yadi Molina has said he is very proud to wear the number. He will be one of the players wearing that number today. And, you know, this is interesting. Other players not of Puerto Rican heritage or descent will have the option of wearing a patch as well. And there will be base jewels honoring Roberto Clemente, number 21. So of course it brings up the conversation, should the number 21 be retired? Now the Pirates have retired number 21, but should it be retired league-wide?
For me, no. I think that to have a number retired from the whole league, I think you start opening up a conversation of who's going to be the next guy. I think that it takes away from Jackie. What could happen, and I want it to happen, and you talked about two other legends, on Roberto Clemente Day, if a team wants to wear 21, the whole team, they can do it. And I think if you have days for players, it just honors it, just like if it was retired. I love numbers being retired when it's a number that's, you know, at this point like 42, but I don't like when I don't see 21 on jerseys. I think that 21, when you see 21 on a player, the first thing that comes to your mind is Roberto Clemente, no matter where that player is from. So I like seeing the number on the field, but I really think that with a day, okay, and honoring it and letting players wear it and remembering his glory, I think that's all you need. You don't need the number retired in order to make the number special, okay? Because technically, every team can go and say, the owner of the Chicago White Sox can say, you know what, we're going to retire 21, and I'm going to retire 21. So you don't need to retire the number to give it the meaning of it. I think that you just glorify it even more by wearing it while you're playing, but also by having a day for it where any individual, not just Puerto Rican or Latino, I think that in today's day and age, I think that if you look into the mirror and you think that you want to represent what Roberto Clemente represented, you should be allowed to wear that 21 on his day.
I understand your point of view. I understand what you're saying as far as you don't need to retire it to give it the meaning that it has. But on the other hand, I don't see how it would take away from Jackie's legacy. I think it would only add his legacy as far as retiring Roberto Clemente's number, because he was just as important. I don't see him being as less important. I think he was just as important for baseball, for the community, for Latinos and Black Latinos, Afro Latinos, so many of them who play now. I don't see how Clemente's number being retired should be an issue. I don't think that there are any other players that live up to Jackie or Clemente. I don't think that when you have that conversation about, oh, who else is going to be retired? Is this guy? They don't live up to the standards of Clemente or Jackie.
All right, so Cesar on Facebook says, I think it's a gray area. Yes, they should be aware of outside issues. They just have to watch what's said and done. Juan says, you all rock. Thanks, Juan. You rock too. Armando says, because of what he did off the field as well. So perhaps he's going for the retirement. The other big question here and our poll of the day is who you think should be the award winner, because we do have the Roberto Clemente Award that is given out to a player who exemplifies his philanthropic side off, and his humanitarianism that he exemplified on and off the field. So there are so many nominees. Let's go really quick. I've got some names here, some notables that are nominated. So each team can nominate one person. Ozzy, you and I were talking about the fact that maybe just maybe not every team needs to have a nominee. Maybe they just narrow it down and there would be more emphasis on what these guys do in their work. Carlos Carrasco won it last year. This year, we've got Nelson Cruz, Eduardo Escobar, Justin Turner, Giancarlo Stanton, Mike Trout, Hunter Pence, Josh Bell, Jason Hayward, Tim Anderson, and Ian Desmond. Ian Desmond opted out for the 2020 season, but he is still nominated. So those are the notables that I chose. Jen, do you have, you want to weigh in on who you think should win?
Well, of course, I'm going to go with Nelson, and not just because that's my boy, but Nelson having won the Muhammad Ali Humanitarian Award this year from ESPN, I think it's only fitting that he win the Roberto Clemente Award this year. I've been a part of what he does, and I know his heart, and I really do. I know that he is all about giving back and helping those in need, and going by Roberto Clemente's quote, as far as if you have the opportunity to make somebody's life greater and you don't, it's a waste of your time on this earth. And I truly believe that Nelson is one of those guys that believes in that wholeheartedly. Whenever he can do something to give back, he is there on the front lines during this pandemic, trying to give back as much as he could. And even prior to, from the beginning of his career, when he was able to send a fire truck to his hometown of Las Matas de Santa Cruz. And so he's been doing this for a very long time. And I think that it is fitting that he would be honored with the award. I'm
going on a limb. Okay, here comes a prediction. Nelson Cruz will be the first player to ever win the American League MVP and the Roberto Clemente Award, because he's going to be the MVP this year. That's my pick. I think that he wins it. I think that he deserves it because he is in the twilight end of his career. He's been doing this for a very, very long time. So if I had to vote, if I see a younger player, because you can be nominated multiple years, I want to give it to guys that can receive the award while they're still playing and not regretting and saying, oh, Nelson retired for whatever reason and we didn't give a chance to give it to him, because it is a big deal. I think this is an award that becomes part of your legacy. It becomes part of, like, I did something off the field and I'm recognized for it. I think that's super important. I think that to some guys that have already multiple MVPs or have put multiple All-Star games, they'll give up an All-Star game to get a Roberto Clemente Award. And now it's harder. Now teams get prepared for it. And it's like the people that are really into it, they really, submit their information. And they've been doing it before. It was kind of like a one-off of, players that were doing their thing kind of quietly. And then teams needed to find out who those players were, or if it was a team initiative and then they would attach a player to it. But I think Nelson fits all the criteria. I think that he's in a point in the game where we need to recognize him for what he has done. I think it's also the right time for him, and he'll be an example for an ambassador for the award. So I'm going on that limb. I think that he wins the award, Roberto Clemente, and I think that he will win the American League MVP.
All right, well, there's a lot of love for Tim Anderson on Facebook right now. Hector says, what Tim Anderson is doing on the South Side neighborhoods of Chicago, trying to change it. Look at the violence and the stereotype. vote for Hunter Pence from Rebecca. She says yes. My mom is an Angels fan, apparently.
She wants Mike.
Mike Trout.
Justin Turner got a vote over there. I saw.
Justin Turner got a vote. You know what? And let me tell you, the Dodgers are doing a lot to prop him up, and they're putting a lot of PR. There's a lot of PR out here on the West Coast for Justin Turner making a case, but
they need to promote it more. I think that when I'm watching MLB Network, when I'm watching the games on the app, I need to know what these players are doing. Again, I know what my friends are doing on the list. I know what Nelson's doing. I know what Miggy, Miguel, Eduardo, TA, but I don't know what other guys are doing. And it's a great way to promote the game. And it shows these guys that they're real humans, that they're humanitarians. They all have they have their own fight. If it's the city that they play in, the town that they're from. And I really think that this award is a big deal. And it's a big part. It has Roberto's name and what it means. Roberto could easily, the MVP award could be named Roberto Clemente. That's how good of a player he was. But he is given an award that, talked about who he was off the field. So I think that fans, and we want to know more about it. So I wish Major League Baseball really pushed to what these guys are doing and not just wait for the award part of it. Like they should just do this throughout the whole year.
Yeah, and I think right from the beginning of the season, you pretty much know who you're going to nominate for that award. So the production, as far as production value, can go into creating a nice feature piece for your player throughout the season. Once September comes, you have something really, really nice to show people. And yeah, I think it should be promoted. I'm not sure. Well, I mean, they always miss the mark.
Even show them, showcase them at the All-Star game. There's so many things they can do. Showcase them at the All-Star game, winter meetings. Again, I think that in our society today, giving back is such a huge thing from corporate America to families. It's part of our plan. It's part of what's your cause. So I really think that Major League Baseball needs to highlight these guys because they're doing this out of some of these guys are doing it with their own money. They're doing it. They've been doing it for multiple years, some guys more than 10 years at a time. Yeah. And we don't know because when that player hasn't played in our town or in our city. So I really wish that, even if you don't win the award, showcasing the great stuff that they're doing. So imagine if there was no social media, we would have no idea what any of these guys are doing.
And I mean, and also they all do, I believe, get $7,500 donated to their charity or to their charity of choice, which is good. Because we all know that when you work with a foundation and you want to give back as much money as you can raise is always important. So that's a good part. But yes, Major League Baseball, please do a better job of promoting your nominees, not just the award, but the nominees. And I understand that there hasn't been a sponsor for the award for, I believe, the past 4 years, which is unfortunate. It's shocking in the sense that really, there's no company out there that wants to sponsor the Roberto Clemente Award. Is that how little you think of the Latino community?
Diversity and inclusion teams everywhere. That's why when I see everybody writing about diversity and inclusion, and I see things like the Roberto Clemente Award not having a sponsor, those are the things that you should be doing if you're out there, corporate America. You pick an award like this, and you could do so much with it because it, again, we were just talking about who he is and where his life was and the era that he played in and what he was doing back then.
Yeah. Fascinating. If you go on MLB.com/Roberto Clemente and you can read all of the wonderful works of philanthropy that these players who are nominated for the award are engaging in. And I will be tweeting that out. But be sure to stay tuned to La Vida Baseball. Check us out on all of our social media platforms because throughout the day, we're going to be releasing new content and creating some more content around the Roberto Clemente Day. We appreciate you tuning in. That's going to do it for us. I'm Julie Alexandria with Jen and Ozzy, and we appreciate you guys and all of your wonderful comments. Thank you for sounding off today. We appreciate it and keep the conversation going. We will see you next week.